Hey Fae folk, welcome and welcome back. So for today's video, I want to talk about Monster High and more specifically the creatures and monsters that inhabit that world. So across 3 generations of Monster High, I feel like there have been so many different monster types tackled. Like we've seen so many different types of monsters, both in the dolls and in whatever sort of media is being made for each generation. But at the same time, I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface, right? Like there are so many legends and myths and creatures and monsters in the world. Like there's so many countries and cultures with unique mythologies and stuff that have different creatures and stuff. And so I thought it would be fun to sit down and just think about creatures that I thought belonged in Monster High. And I could go on for hours probably, just because again there are so many different mythologies to pull from, as I said, or legends, or cryptids that you could pull from. So we're just doing a small sampling. Okay, we're doing a little handful of monsters or creatures that I think should be in Monster High. And I did really think on this, okay, because you could say, oh yeah, I'd like to see any different creature in Monster High, and that would be a 5-minute video and probably not very exciting. But I do think that some different types of monsters lend themselves more so to what Monster High is trying to do, which is have them be monsters but also fashionable. And so I tried to pick ones that I thought would not only just be interesting from a creature or a monster perspective, or whatever you want to call it, but from a perspective of really truly, I think that this type of monster would fit in well at Monster High and would have a cool design and would make sense for the series. So that's what we're doing today. I'm talking about, I think I have 5. I want to say it's 5 that I want to talk about today. If you guys like this, I'm happy to do a part 2 because I'm sure there are tons more. I also would love to hear what monsters you would like to see come to Monster High in the comments down below. But yeah, without further ado, let me get into the monsters that I am most eager and most feel should go to Monster High. So the first creature that I want to talk about today doesn't really come from any specific mythology or anything like that. So maybe it doesn't fit in quite as well, but I still think it would be good. It's a scarecrow, okay? And I feel like a cursed, living scarecrow would be so top tier for Monster High. I didn't realize until the moment I sat down in this chair that maybe that's my Hoodoo bias coming off, because I feel like Hoodoo from Gen 1 as a voodoo doll kind of has a similar vibe to a living scarecrow. Hi, Reese. I don't know if y'all heard her meow. She's down here today. She's visiting with us. So sorry if you hear my cat meowing. But yeah, I feel like that would be really an interesting character. There's a lot that you could do with how they came about, how they became cursed, how they became sentient and all that. And that doesn't even begin to get into the aesthetic, which I feel like is the most exciting part. Hi, baby girl. I know, mommy's talking. I know. It's okay, baby. Sorry, I got distracted. I love my cat so much. Anyway, back to the scarecrow. There are already scarecrow Halloween costumes that kind of range from being absolutely freaky to kind of cutesy to those awkward sexy ones where for some reason women's Halloween costumes just always have to be sexy. No shame if you like those, but it's just kind of funny to me. Point being though, scarecrows already have one outlet that is using them to be a fashionable thing in some degree. So I feel like it wouldn't be that hard to translate to Monster High. I do also think it's a really big benefit that they have a range of ways that they can present, because again, scarecrows could be kind of cutesy, kind of harmless looking, just bumbling and fun, or they could be absolutely terrifying. So wherever Monster High would want their character to fall on that scale, it's completely viable. And I just really think there's a good aesthetic with scarecrows, not my aesthetic, but definitely a very solid, strong aesthetic. It's very fall vibes, which I do love. I will say that, I am a fall person to my core. I love fall so much. So I do like that aspect, but there's also just a lot of textures and fabrics. When I think of scarecrow, I think of straw and flannel and burlap and patchwork stuff and big funny hats. And I just feel like there's so much potential to turn all of those different, very interesting, especially the very textural elements, into a really, really cool design for a character or a doll. So some of the other ones I feel are exciting because they pull from folklore or something like that. But this one I just think is fun because I just think it's fun. That's it. I just feel like this would be really solid. I feel like it would be super easy to design a cool character. And I feel like Monster High should do it. Kind of going on the same lines, I feel like we should have a clown, a cursed killer clown. Maybe not a fully killer clown, depending on how kid-friendly Monster High wants to make it. But Come on, it's right there. Obviously, we did get the Skeletor doll for Pennywise, and we did have Freak to Chic back in Gen 1 of Monster High, but we don't have a true, proper character that is like just a cursed clown, right? Like we had with Freak to Chic, Rochelle, who was dressed up as a clown. And absolute vibe. I love that line so much. I recently talked about it in my top 10 Monster High lines video. It's like my favorite line of all time for Monster High across any generation. So of course I am a little bit biased because I just feel like that aesthetic is really good, but it is such a strong aesthetic. Like the circus vibes, the clown vibes are so fun and so interesting. And again, there's a lot of versatility. There's a lot of different things you could do with a character like that. Honestly, any color palette could be done. You could have them in overalls, or you could have them in little like bloomer shorts. You could have them in a fun dress. Like there's no limit to what you can do with a clown character. So that's another reason I think it would be really excellent to see in Monster High, because it's just something I feel like so many people are a little bit afraid of clowns, and like obviously Monster High is populated by things that people are a little bit afraid of. So I feel like it makes tons of sense. And I feel like the aesthetics are just so open that, again, much like the Scarecrow, and even more so than the Scarecrow, arguably, it would be so easy to design an absolutely banging character and an absolutely amazing doll for a clown. And honestly, at this point, I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened yet. Like this feels like such the obvious choice. I would still love to see them do it. I'm just like, we're in Gen 3 and y'all haven't done this yet? Come on. We need a clown. So the next one and all of the ones following this actually are going to be more like proper monsters or parts of mythology and stuff like that. And the first one I want to talk about is a kappa. So if you aren't familiar with like a kappa and what that is, it is like a Japanese water demon. They're kind of small and humanoid, but they tend to have scaly skin, at least from like the folklore that I'm familiar with. And the big thing is that they'd have a turtle shell on their back and a indented bowl in their head that is filled with water. Hi, baby. Hi. She wants attention. And the big thing with like the kappa mythology is that they can be quite aggressive, kind of like tricky, attack people, you know, all that jazz, but they're also very honorable. And if you get them to like bow and the water spills out of their head, then they're kind of beholden to you in some legends. I've also heard legends where it's like that's their life force and they'll die. I don't know like 100%. I don't know if there's like a right legend, right? Because it's one of those things where it's just like a mythology. It gets passed down. Different people say different things. But I've always been fascinated by kappas. I think that they're very interesting creatures. I will say they're not the prettiest. Like they don't come nicely prepackaged like some other thing. Like a vampire. Some vampires are portrayed as like much scarier looking. Reese's playing with the bag. I'm really sorry if it's noisy. But like it's pretty easy to turn a vampire into something that has like a nice design, right? I feel like a kappa would be more of a challenge, but that's kind of why I like it. I feel like it's really cool when Monster High can take creatures that are more fearsome and turn them into these fashionable dolls. And I just feel like a kappa would be so unique. Like it would be so different than really what we see in any of Monster High. It has like so many unique elements to it. I'd be very curious to see how they would do like the bowl on the head, right? Because that's a key component of a kappa. Like that is 100% necessary for it to be a kappa. And so I feel like it'd be so interesting to see if they would do like a head sculpt filled with like clear plastic to be the water or something. I don't know. I feel like this one is just so interesting. It would definitely be a challenge for the designers to make it cutesy enough, or like maybe cutesy is the wrong word because not all Monster High dolls are cutesy, but like fashionable enough to really fit in with the rest of the Monster High designs. But I feel like they have talented designers at Mattel, right? Like they could definitely make it happen. And this would be so interesting to see how they would execute it. Like this is just one that I feel like is personally very fascinating to me. And I would love to see a Monster High take on a kappa. Okay, this next one I actually feel so strongly about. I feel like this would make an excellent Monster High design, and that is the Selkie. Selkies are found in a bunch of different mythologies, such as Irish and Scottish mythologies, and they're basically like a half human, half seal. So they are not like typically depicted as a mermaid type with like a seal bottom half. It's more so that when they're in the water, they are a seal, and then they can come on land and they can shed their coat, and then they can have a human appearance. But the coat is really, really, really important in Selkie mythology, because without their seal coat, they can't retransform back into a seal, and therefore they can't go back into the water. And the kind of dark side here is that within, you know, the legends and everything, typically speaking, Selkies are super, super beautiful, and so men will steal the Selkies' coats and like kind of hold the coat hostage and force Selkies to become their wives because they can't escape back to the sea without their coat, which is not chill. However, that's also part of why I think it would be a really, really good fit for Monster High, because I love the idea of Monster High kind of being a safe haven because like all of the other monsters would never do that to a Selkie. Like they would never take the Selkie's coat. I love the idea of like a creature like a Selkie where their existence is like kind of scary for them. Like they have to be so careful around people and like they can't trust people and it's like a big deal. I just love the idea of them having a safe place and like Monster High being a place for them where they don't have to be afraid, where they can just leave their coat in their room while they wander the halls and they know that it's going to be there when they come back. Like I just am obsessed with that idea from a lore standpoint. I think that that's really nice. And then also from an aesthetic standpoint, I just think that Selkies are pretty cool. Seals are really, really pretty creatures to me. I do find them just cute and cuddly. And like, I understand that seals can be very dangerous, but also they're still cute and cuddly. And I feel like they've got like a really pretty color scheme. This is one that I feel like would fit into Monster High for sure. Aesthetically, they might need to lean in because I feel like in a lot of the mythologies that I'm familiar with, it is very cut and dry where it's like seal person. Like you can't necessarily really tell unless you see them transforming. I feel like Monster High would want to lean a little bit more into not like a half and half mermaid thing like I was saying, but maybe like have them have some sort of seal characteristics when they are in their more humanoid form, just so that it does feel more monstrous. But even so, I just feel like the design would be really top tier. And again, from a more lore sort of standpoint, I think that it would be really cute to have the Selkies fit in like a very wholesome way at Monster High. So I definitely feel like the team could do something really wonderful with this particular mythological creature. Next up, I want to talk about the salamanders, and I'm not speaking about the little like amphibious guys that you might find in like a creek or something, depending on where you live. At least not like really. I'm talking about the mythological version. Salamanders are found in like a shockingly wide array of cultures in, again, talking about like the mythological version across like Europe and the Middle East and Asia, just very, very widespread myths here. And it's very fascinating to me because within the mythology, they usually still look like the real life salamanders, but they're associated with fire instead of water. And I just find that so interesting to take a creature that like very much needs water to survive and like is associated with water in the real world, but like the mythology is kind of the opposite. I don't know why, that's just a fascinating concept to me. But the reason that I like this idea for Monster High specifically is not just selfish. It's not just because I think salamanders are cool. It's because I do think that it would be such like a fun base doll to have kind of a lizardy doll. Like that's just something I really, really vibe with. But then also I feel like because they're not humanoid, yes, that might make it a little bit harder to translate if you just look at it like a surface level. But I feel like because they're not humanoid, that leaves so much open for interpretation and there's so much possibility because they don't really have like a concrete like upright person design. The base doll could be really cool and very much like a salamander. I said lizard earlier. I know they're not actually lizards, but like they kind of sort of look like lizards. So I feel like the base doll could be really, really cool. But then there's just so many options when it comes to the fashion and also the lore that you could put behind this character, especially in terms of representation because they are found in so many different cultures. I feel like that's a really, really cool aspect that could add some more diversity to Monster High in terms of like the cast of characters of the dolls and also with the fashion because again, salamanders in mythology don't really wear clothes. So there's not like a set outfit that they're supposed to have or really any key components that they would have to have in an outfit. So I feel like the designers could pull from any of the cultures that like they might want to go with for a salamander character. Obviously, like you'd want to pick one. Like if your character is from like the Middle East, you wouldn't want to dress them in like European styles. But I'm just saying like you could pick it and you could have like traditional outfits from whatever culture they're picking from, or they could make a more modern twist on it and really just add anything. I just feel like because there's not a set style for a salamander, because again, it's not like they wear clothes in the mythology, there's so much opportunity there to do so many cool things with the design. And again, with like the fire and everything. I mean, I know we already have Heath, who's like a fiery character, but that's even cooler because then he could be friends with like the salamander character and they could bond over their fire powers. I just feel like it would be absolutely top tier. And I just feel like it'd be so cool, especially because if you had more than one salamander character, you could have them be from different cultures and showcase like the slight differences in the mythologies, add a bunch of representation, add a bunch of like cultural clothing to like even more add on to that representation. It would be so good. I want a salamander doll. I want a salamander doll so bad. Okay, this last one is extremely self-indulgent, but I really, really want to see a Will-O-the-Wisp character in Monster High. Kind of similarly to the salamander, they're found in so many different cultures, literally worldwide, from the Americas to Britain to Thailand. Like, these creatures are everywhere. And of course, there are going to be differences in like these specific mythologies based off of like the different areas, but in general, they do have like a similar vibe to them. So Will-O-the-Wisps are little balls of light or fire that kind of float along. Typically speaking, in like a marshy, swampy sort of area is where like I've most commonly read about them being found. And I have heard two kind of opposing things about them. Sometimes I've heard that it will be like a little bit of a mischief maker and they'll kind of lure people off the trail and get them lost in the marshes and in the swamps. Or on the opposite end there, it could be leading them to like a treasure or something like that and kind of be more of a positive thing. Think like the movie Brave from Disney, where it's like the Will-O-the-Wisp is leading her to her destiny. So that's like the more positive spin on the Will-O-the-Wisp. Honestly, I would take either. I don't even care. I just find them so fascinating. I don't know why. I'm not sure why I'm so into it, but I do think that they're really cool creatures. And I do think this one, again, very much like the salamander, would pose such a cool design challenge for the like Monster High staff to turn like this just incorporeal form, like just this ball of light, into a really beautiful doll. Again, because of all the different cultures they could pull from, they could do a lot of different types of clothing and lots of different representation there. But also, I'm just thinking about the base doll specifically, and I feel like it could be so fun. I'm thinking kind of like how they do Spectra with her transparent arms. I feel like transparent everything, because like they're made of light, so you can kind of sort of see through them, right? And I feel like that would be cool to have a completely transparent doll. Like that would just be so different and so fun. Also, maybe like tinting it slightly blue, because maybe it is just like the influence of Brave on me, but I feel like I think of Will-O-the-Wisps of being blue, or you could tint it a different color. I'm not fussy. And then even I'm thinking like, kind of going back to Gen 1 of Monster High, how they did Kiyomi Haunterly, who was a faceless ghost. Definitely a different creature. Like, I'm not trying to say that, like, that's in any way correlated to a Will-O-the-Wisp, but because they're faceless ghost, they have like this really cool just kind of outline face where it's not detailed. There's like just a little bit on there. I feel like you could do the same thing for a Will-O-the-Wisp character, because their face wouldn't be super concrete like it would be a little bit, again, incorporeal. I just feel like that would be such an interesting design to try to execute and has so much potential to be super cool. If I ever get back on my customizing train and like back into my projects that just keep stacking up that I want to do, I would love to make a Will-O-the-Wisp custom doll. I don't necessarily know that Monster High would ever actually make one, just because I do think it is a little bit more challenging than certain things like the clown or the scarecrow that we talked about earlier, or even other like proper mythological creatures like the Selkie. I feel like that's a lot more concrete and would be a lot easier for them to do. So I feel like it's more likely that we would see a Selkie than a Will-O-the-Wisp, but I want to see a Will-O-the-Wisp so bad, just so badly, because I feel like since there's so little there, like in terms of appearance to go off of, everybody, like 10 different people could design a doll and they would be 10 different dolls and it would be so beautiful and so cool. And I just desperately want to see it, even though I kind of doubt that we'll ever actually get it. But yeah, those are all of the creatures that I wanted to talk about today. Again, I could go on and on and on and on and on. But I did want to try to keep this video like slightly more compact for you guys, especially because it is a little bit more of like a talking video and like there's a lot less pictures and stuff for me to show, so it's less visually interesting. But yeah, those are the creatures that I first thought of that I was like, I definitely would love to see them make an appearance in Monster High. As I said before, if you want to see more videos of this, if you like me talking about these different critters and like my thoughts on how they'd fit in, I'm happy to do another one. And I definitely want to hear your thoughts on what we discussed today, as well as creatures that you would like to see featured in Monster High. But that is going to be it for today, guys. So I hope you were able to enjoy. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night or whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.